Welcome to another episode. Happy Wednesday. I'm having so much fun in this series and I'm getting a lot of really great feedback. Thank you so much for reaching out to me directly, letting me know how this is resonating with you, letting me know how it's impacting your lens, right? The way that you're looking at your career, looking at your life, and how it's actually preparing you for holiday season. That's exactly the point. That's exactly why we're doing it this month. And I am happy to hear that we are accomplishing exactly what we've set out to accomplish. So congratulations to you for putting in the work and learning all of these key pieces so that you can avoid burnout. And if you're there, you can get out of it. Okay. Now, I said that I've heard from some of you just about all the feedback. The other thing that I've heard is this desire to understand what are the signs of potential burnout, not internally, but what are signs inside the organization that clue me into a marathon situation versus a sprint, right? If I know what to look for, Katrina, then maybe I can avoid it. And I would agree with you. Let's go ahead and talk about some of those things. Now, before I jump into that, I just want to make sure one thing. Where are you right now in your career? I asked you that last week, right? Are you smooth sailing? Everything's normal? Typical work week? Nothing major happening? Not on a verge of a potential burnout because everything's smooth? Could be the case, right? Are you in this sprint situation, right? Maybe it just started last week that things are starting to get a little crazy and you're having to sacrifice a little bit of your personal time and you're working a little extra, you're giving a little bit more, okay? Or maybe you've been doing that for quite some time, weeks upon weeks, maybe months even, and you're like, no, I am in a marathon, Katrina. This is not a sprint. I am on the edge of burnout. I am living in burnout, right? Whatever it is, you've got to know where you are. So hopefully you identified that from last week's session or episode rather. If you didn't, please go back and check it out and enjoy it. And as always, if you've got questions, if we can help you here at Legend Leaders, send me an email, info@legendleaders.com, and let us help you. Okay. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, you may have done this. I didn't ask you to do it last week, but you may have done it. And you may have said, you know what is giving a little extra part of my brand? Is that what I'm known for? And do I need to be cognizant of that as I move forward into my executive role? And hopefully you ask yourself that question. If you didn't, I want to challenge you to ask yourself that question this week. Okay. As part of what we're diving in this week, which is the clues, right? What are the clues? We're going to be looking for the clues. And I have 3 clues to give you. Are there more clues? Of course there are, but these are the big 3. If you see 1, 2, or all 3 of these clues, it's a sign that you're going to be in marathon season, Groundhog Day perfect storm situation. I keep using that new phrase. We're going to hashtag that thing. I just think it's hilarious. But anyway, you know that this is not an anomaly. It's not an exception. It's not a very short sprint. You know you're in for a marathon. Okay. Let's dive into those 3 clues. And I want you to take a look at them. I want you to make some notes, write this stuff down. And what I want you to do is this. If you're in the situation where you are in a sprint right now, if you're in a marathon, then what I want you to do is take what I'm going to teach you and apply it to the situation you're in right now in your career. If it's typical, everything's smooth, you feel really good, then what I want you to do is look back at a sprint situation or maybe even a marathon situation if you've had one, okay? And look to see if these clues existed in those events of the past, all right? In other words, I want you to take what you've learned today and I want you to immediately apply it to your career so we can anchor in this knowledge and make sure that you've really got it because I don't want you to ever miss the clues in the future, okay? Perfect. So what are the clues? The first one is feedback and information from the organization or the company. Okay. If the company is saying, we're in for a long haul here, folks, we're not going to get out of this anytime soon. That's a clue. Now it's really easy to go back to COVID. I'm going to take it to COVID for a second because that's such an obvious marathon situation that we can all immediately agree and understand what we're talking about. When we got into COVID, nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew how to handle it. And we heard it on the news, but we also heard it internally in our organizations. It was said, we don't know how to deal with this. We don't know how long this change is going to happen. We don't know what we're going to have to do. This looks like it's going to be a long event, right? We knew it. The news was saying it, but forget the news for a second. The companies were saying it. Internally, we were all hearing these messages. And so that's clue number one. When the company is saying we're facing something as an organization, when the company is saying, hey, the industry that we're in is facing headwinds, right? We're facing a change. Something's going on. When the company is blatantly, obviously telling you that that's rough and it's going to be a long period of time to get through it, recognize that. Now, I know that sounds silly. I know it sounds crazy. You're like, Katrina, of course I'm going to recognize it. But yet most of us hear it, but we don't change our behavior because of it. And what I want you to do with these 3 clues is when you hear these clues, I want you to recognize what we talked about last week. I got to get out of sprint leadership mentality and I got to get into marathon leadership mentality. Okay? It's one thing to hear it. It's one thing to see the clues. It's another thing to shift how we lead. Okay? It's really important. This week, I'm walking you through the clues. We'll spend time talking about how to change our leadership and the things that we can do to take care of ourselves in a bit. But this is the clues. This is what we're looking for. The other great example right now that everyone can relate to is the economy, right? Like it or not, we're in a recession. I mean, that's the reality of it. Can anyone definitively say when we're going to be out of that? Well, there are speculations. There may be some ideas. There's some things that can happen. And when we start to see what we call lead measures, right? Clues that tell us we're going to get out of a recession, then people will start to say, well, we're getting close to the end or whatever, right? But we don't have any idea. And so that's another great example of something where we're hearing people tell us we are in this scenario. It is not a sprint. It's a marathon. We have got to change the way that we work. So that's number one. The company, the organization, the industry is saying we are in a situation that is going to take quite some time to get out of. It's clue number one. Clue number 2 is when you have been tasked with achieving something in your portion of the business. Okay? It's something that you own. It's a project. It's an arm of the business, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a project inside of your business, your portion of the business, but it could also be overarchingly your business as a whole, right? Maybe you're in operations, and so you're responsible for ensuring execution throughout the entire company, delivering on what your company sells or provides from a service perspective. And so you're responsible for delivering operational metrics and overall results, right? If you're in operations. Whatever it is, whether it's a project or it's your overall business, you've been given targets and numbers and metrics to deliver to. Many times, whenever we're challenged to deliver to those metrics, we're also told that we will get X number of resources. Now, resources could be headcount and staffing. It could be additional support from other teams inside the organization. And it could also be resources like technology. Okay? Now, this clue number 2, I'm taking a long time to explain it because I really want you to paint the picture because we've all been in this situation. No matter what portion of business we're in, we've all been in this. We're given a target, we're given goals and endpoints that we've got to reach as a team. And then we've been promised resources in order to deliver to those targets. In clue number 2, those resources are no longer available. Meaning, budget's been reduced and your headcount can no longer come along. The teams inside the organization can no longer support. Maybe they've been eliminated or something's happened and those teams are no longer available. They've been pivoted to other portions of the business. Or if it's a technology resource, funding's not there, or it's been, again, shifted to another part of the organization. Bottom line is, whatever resources you've been allocated to achieve your target, they are no longer available. Now, again, we've all been there. And what I have seen a ton of women do, and I have done it in my career. Guilty, okay? I've done it. That's why I know. That's why I can speak to it. Is we look at ourselves and say, like we talked about last week, I'm the problem solver. I can fix this. I cannot show up and not hit this target. I'm responsible for delivering these results. And I don't fail. So I'm going to find a way. Now, I love the fact that you're passionate, you're driven, and you're going to find a way. I love all of those traits. That's a positive thing, right? But we will burn ourselves out in a heartbeat trying to solve something that we simply have no resources in order to solve. We become very bad leaders when we look at a situation and say, okay, we have a target and we've got to get here. And we were promised 10 team members to do it, but we've only got 3. So 3, get here. Is that being a good leader? Are those 3 really going to appreciate you or follow your leadership, or are they going to end up hating you because you're driving them to achieve a goal that's really not attainable with only 3 people? The bottom line is this. If you've been given a target and you were promised resources to get there and those resources are unavailable, instead of saying, I'm the leader that doesn't fail and I'm going to find a way, and driving yourself and your team to get there in a way that's simply exhausting, it's unattainable. Okay? That is a clue. Do not be the martyr. Do not sacrifice yourself and your team. The company will take it. Rest assured, there is not a company that ultimately will not take all of the sacrifice that you're giving. I'm not talking about leaders of the company. I'm talking about just the company, because the company is an entity, the company is a machine, and it will take whatever fuel you put into it. Okay? I'm simply saying, if the resources aren't there, then be the marathon leader. Be the leader that raises your hand and says, look, the targets you've provided to me at this point are not attainable with the resources that are available. We need to restructure the targets, or we need to talk about reallocating resources and getting back what we were promised in order to be able to deliver to this. That is what a good executive leader does. That's the reality of it. Okay? So that's clue number 2. Target, resources are gone. Don't throw yourself into that marathon. Be smart. Okay? Now, what's point number 3? I'm going to look at my notes because I don't want to screw this one up. So let me look at my notes. Point number 3 is when your work hours, and this is really basic, and it's funny that I didn't think about it. I went through the hard ones first. This one's so basic that this is probably the biggest clue that we all miss. And that is when our work hours exceed our typical work hours for more than 2 weeks at a time. Okay? Let me say it a little bit differently. Let's pretend that you're used to working 50 hours a week. Okay? As an executive, 50 hours a week, not unheard of. So you work 50 hours a week. That's your typical work week. And you're still doing the self-care. You have time for you. You have that mental downtime. You have family time. That's normal. Okay? I'm not saying you have to accept 50 hours. Let's not get into that. This is just an example. Okay? So in this example, a typical executive work week is 50 hours. Well, for the past 2 weeks, you've been working 70, 80 hours. All right? At the end of those 2 weeks, instead of keeping your head down and working, I need you to pick your head up. I need you to look around, and you've got to ask the question, is this sprint over with? Or am I entering into a marathon? Okay? Now, if you notice, the first 2 clues come from the organization. There are signs that come from the organization. This third one, why it's so hard, is because it relies upon you to recognize a situation that you're in and call it. And that can be hard because of all the things we talked about prior. But you can do this. Okay, so what is this third clue? I am working hours above and beyond. And I'm not talking about just a few hours. I'm talking about 10, 20, 30 hours plus more. And I did it last week, and I'm doing it this week, And so I need to pause and I need to look. Is this a sprint and it's almost over? That's fine. Finish it out. Give a little extra, finish it out. Because we all have to do that from time to time. Or is this a marathon? Now, how do you figure out if it's a marathon? Go have some conversations with other leaders. Seek to understand how long it's going to take to resolve the problem. If there is no end in sight, then you've got to switch to marathon leadership. Okay? If there is an end in sight and it's next week, then you've got to make that internal decision. Can I give what I'm giving now, or do I need to pull back a little bit? There is no wrong answer. There is your answer. Right? Okay. Those are the 3 clues. Company saying it's going to be a long haul. Resources are taken away and you can't hit a target. You're working hours above and beyond, and it's the end of the 2nd week, and you need to pick your head up and seek to understand how much longer this is going to last. Okay? Those are the clues. So like I said at the beginning of this episode, what I want you to do is take this information, look at where you are right now, and ask yourself, am I seeing any of these clues? If you're not in this situation and you're working your standard hours, then take these 3 clues, look back at a prior situation, and ask yourself if you identify or can identify any of these 3 clues in that experience. Okay? I look forward to connecting with you next week. As always, go and be legendary.